well. Spills to Bailey. Bailey's already kicked the goal from there. He breaks loose. Miracle goal. What a goal from Bailey.
And I declare the winner of the 2023 Brownlow Medal, Lachie Neale of the Brisbane Lions Football Club.
The Queens of the Jungle. They reclaim their throne. The Brisbane Lions are AFLW premiers for the second time.
Back to Rayner. Rayner from 55. Is this the perfect response? Bang!
Ashcroft out of midair. Oh, you are kidding me!
My God.
Something unbelievable from the kid. That is ridiculous.
We've got a top-end nude out there in Robinson, and he is loving it.
Oh, he's text.
He's almost flexing.
Here's Charlie again. Cue that song back up.
The Brisbane Lions Fancast is back, and also so is footy. We got footy this week. Real footy, not some pre-season stuff. We've got a real home and away, 4 points up for grab game of bloody footy this week against Carlton. How exciting.
It's pretty good, I gotta say. Pretty good. Can't wait.
It's come around quick. But I'm very happy. I'm going to be heading to the Gabba on Friday night. Very much looking forward to that, of course. The last time we came up against Carlton, it was also at the Gabba. It was a very, very memorable prelim final night for a number of reasons, but we will get to that later in the show. Once again, huge shout out to our sponsors for 2024. Hop on Brewery Tours, hop on brewerytours.com.au, and Crisp Communication, crispcoms.co, who are going to sort us out with some stickers, some Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers, and we'll let you know how you can get your hands on them over the next little bit. But they're going to be free. They're going to be available through the Crisp Communications website. So that's bloody exciting stuff. We've got some, I guess, official merch.
Yeah, I mean, I've got unofficial merch, but that's basically it. I was going to ask, if they're free, can you afford to send some to me?
I'm sure we'll be able to sort something out.
Postage is not free, last time I checked.
No, it is not.
Which was yesterday, but there you go.
You're going to pay for stamps.
Brilliant stuff. So thank you to our sponsors for that, because I love a good sticker.
Yeah.
You can put one here, or you can put one here. Yeah, endless places, literally. Anywhere that can be stuck can be stickered.
If you want to know exactly where Patrick is pointing to, make sure you catch the video version of this podcast, which will be available on our Patreon page as well. Everything you possibly need is available at brisbanelionsfancast.com.au to keep up to date with everything we're doing, to see the videos, to hear the podcast, to get all the links. Everything is available there, and don't forget to follow us on various social media platforms. Join the Discord, all that sort of stuff. All right, housekeeping out of the way. We played the Swans on, was it Thursday or Friday night? It was Thursday night in Blacktown.
Thursday, yes.
And we got done in by another bloody blackout.
And a black snake.
Yeah. Blacktown, Black Snake, blackout.
Hot weather. Goodness me.
Didn't it show in the game?
Can't say I was particularly disappointed with the delay and stuff. It was kind of funny because, like, I think I just was like, oh yeah, the footy's on, but I'm making dinner, so I'll just, like, skip through half-time. And by the time I turned it on, hadn't even started yet.
Yeah.
How good.
Whereas I was more on the annoyed side of things, where it had already been pushed back 2 or 3 hours or whatever it was, and then another half hour. I was just like, I want to see my team play, please. I'm ready for this, please.
We had, I would say, a good commentary team. Brownie, Bucks, and Papalia were all right.
Yeah. It's weird to see Papalia commentate a non-West Australia game, so maybe he's being involved more into sort of heavy rotation over at Fox Footy this year. Who knows? Would like to see it, because he's a decent play-by-play.
I'd like that. And also, you know, I don't mind the old triumvirate of Lynch, Brownie, and Bucks.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we talked last year about the grand final recall from 2002, and it was a pretty awkward situation, but they seem to have some, like, genuine camaraderie between the three of them, which I think translates pretty well. And, you know, they're not afraid to have a dig at each other and not afraid to, you know, they're all on the same team about certain issues and things like that. And she's sort of just happy to be there more than anything. So it kind of works for me. I don't mind it.
All right. Well, what did you think of the game against the Swans? I thought it was a fairly decent hit out in the lead up to opening round against tough opposition, and it was a tough slog of a game. There'll be some sore boys after that, I reckon.
Yeah, there were definitely probably like the first half and the first quarter, you know, quite pretty even. Like almost sort of kick for kick at times, and just I think a little bit of polish by us kind of really, got us ahead of them and kept us ahead more, more or less all the way to halftime. They might have kicked ahead in the second quarter.
Yeah, I think second and third quarter is where our stoppage game really got going, and they barely got a clearance in those middle two quarters. And in the third quarter is where we really put the foot down. But it was a slog of a game for the first little bit, fairly even, as you said. And then once we got our stoppage game going, we sort of got a bit more fluid ball movement. I mean, McCluggage was obviously far and away best on ground. But yeah, it's good signs.
Yeah, I kind of noticed. So our stoppage game got ahead in the second quarter. They were getting us on transition a little bit. They weren't getting us out the back, but it was almost like our disposal forward of centre was not clean enough to allow the defence to sort of squeeze properly. So there were quite a few attempts on goal and goals they scored where our defence was kind of moving back, and they just sort of had 1 or 2 meters on us, which I thought was a little bit of a warning. But then in the third quarter, when we cleaned up disposal, we really turned the screw early on in that, and they got not a lot, particularly early on. The first 10 minutes of that quarter were probably the most impressive, most impressive 10 minutes I think we've played in pre-season, and I think that'd be a massive blueprint for what Fagan will want to do in the season. That level of clean disposal forward, the high pressure, and then the squeezing of the backs all the way up.
Yeah, you could tell, especially the back six. They were pushing up a lot, like more aggressively than years gone by. Probably worth noting, seeing as we're talking about our stoppage game, they were missing Chad Warner and Luke Parker, probably two of their better midfielders. You'd say they would probably be in your starting 3 midfield for Sydney.
Yeah, well, they're going to be missing a few now when you throw in Adams and also old mate Shoulder. So that's a lot of experienced guys for a Sydney team. So I think they'll be hoping to more or less sort of survive the first month of the season as much as anything, rather than expecting to win every game so far, I think, Sydney. But we took advantage of it. We don't have Ashcroft. We didn't have Dev Robb in the rotations. Lockie Neal was back, and he didn't really look like he'd missed a beat. So that was great.
There was a bit of a heart and mouth moment there where he took a bump and clutched at his shoulder. And, I don't know about you, but I sort of went, oh no, not again. Because he's had issues with, I'm not sure if it was that particular shoulder, but, there's been a couple of years, yeah.
So I remembered the interview he gave on 360 where he's basically had that shoulder bone fused.
Yeah.
So if it goes, it's basically like it's got to be hit by like some sort of titanium car.
Yeah.
So I was pretty confident that it would have been fine, because it's not going to pop out. It's a matter of like it would actually have to shatter the entire like rotator cuff or whatever, which I just, given the contact, I didn't think would happen. And speaking to my partner who knew someone who had a fused hip, I think.
Sure.
She used to work with him, and he said that when he would like have impact to stuff, it would hurt a lot, but there would be no kind of outstanding kind of issue.
Okay.
So the sort of thing that would ordinarily cause like, someone's shoulder, like it was just, a stinger, not in the conventional term, but just it would have hurt a lot, but it's structurally fine. So I wasn't too worried, but I can see how people would have been, particularly given that Taylor Adam did a medial, not soon before. So
probably one of the more impressive things was Oscar McInerney's performance against Brodie Grundy. So there's been times over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years where we know Big O is a decent ruckman. We know he's probably not in that sort of upper echelon, the Max Gawn level. And there has been times where he has been towed up by ruckmen that are just genuinely more crafty ruckmen. And Brodie Grundy has, had his number before. But I thought Owie did really well.
Yeah, well, we kind of put Owie in the top 10 category rather than the top 5 category. As to who is in what and in which order is kind of neither here nor there. He looks strong. He looks reasonably fit. Like, he's never going to be the quickest bloke, but the amount of times he popped up forward of the ball and behind the ball was pretty impressive. And I think Grundy wasn't able to work off him as well. But at the same time, like, I think Grundy's probably up for a pretty big year. But yeah, it's definitely one to watch. And we all know, we all love Big O.
And just his clearance game is probably one of the better clearance ruckman, I would say, as well. Just his ability to get his hands on the ball and either handball at 35 metres or chuck it on the hoof and get it 60 odd metres is invaluable. And he's often up there with our top clearance players by the end of a game.
I think he probably knows that if he can put it in an area, the forward pressure is so kind of selfless and uniform that in another team it would probably look horrible and lead to far more turnovers or a more structured defence. But our kind of manic attackers allow him to be able to do that. So it's a product of the situation he's in, which is great. And it serves us really well because it helps us kind of get that initial clearance. And I think, like, it's funny because the clearances he does, they're not like loopy bad clearances. Like, sometimes you get someone and you're like, oh, that was a clearance, and they've kicked the ball 700 meters in the sky and it's gone, Darcy Wilmot mortar style. He's angled that mortar down so far this preseason. So I think, yeah, like, they're dangerous clearances. They're not all going to work, but if they allow us to push and squeeze and kind of cut off the passing lanes, then that's great.
Now, Zorko, he's had 2 fairly decent games. He's looking up for it. Now, whether that can last a whole season, I don't know, but his 2 preseason hitouts have been fairly decent.
They've been very high energy.
Yeah.
Kicked a couple of goals. He kicked it over 50 metres, the little fella.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. A little Darcy Gardner assist.
Yes.
So took the mark, quick hands. There you go. That's one made in about 2014 or something. But it's I found it interesting that he's sort of operating in bursts.
Yeah.
So it's sort of he's operating as that kind of high impact player, which, albeit he's doing it over the whole game, but I still think that kind of leads to him being a sub being a good idea. But he's not doing himself any disservice. I've remembered the word, not anti-favours or whatever the hell I came up with last week. So that was good. There was a bit of a... So, I mean, this will sit with you and I, given a certain incident that happened at training one day. Darcy Wilmot and Swans fella.
Haywood, yeah.
The old one goes in with proper footy technique and the other one goes in, where do I point? With head over the ball like a peanut and cops one in the... Well, I mean, you cop one in the chest, but Haywood cop one in the mush.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where I was listening to it. It might have been on SEN.
I think Kane and Kingy discussed it the next day.
Yeah, I just think that they cannot be rewarding poor technique in the contest if they're serious about protecting the head. And we'll come to that soon.
Yeah.
But, I just think, and I don't mean to tally up because that was, we're playing social footy and I went in like a steam train. So you were not happy with that at the time. But, here we are about 8 years later. So,
yeah, I was genuinely interested to see if that was going to get looked at. Obviously, because Haywood gets collected high, Pal Pepper got 4 weeks the week before. Brayshaw retiring. How's the AFL going to handle this? Are they even going to look at it? And I haven't heard anything since. So maybe that's going to come out today. That it's been looked at. Maybe there's a fine, but I don't. Bias aside, I don't think you can be suspending players for that because, as Kane and Kingy point out, that's just textbook technique. You taught that since you're 5 years old. And Haywood, whether he's cognitively going in head first looking for a free kick or if he thinks that's genuinely the right way to go get a ball, I'm not sure. They got a goal out of it, so I mean, what do you do? If that's gonna be the result, people are gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, there's something's got to give with that because it's sort of like Dustin Martin back in 16-17, he was so good at picking up the ball square on like that.
Yeah.
But he could do it in a way that he wasn't putting his head at risk. He was kind of propped up. So he was able to go in and almost flick the ball up, and it was almost an effective way to not have to break stride doing it. Whereas now, just like putting your head over the ball, it's lost meaning for what it was back in like the 90s or the 2000s, where, you know, putting your head over the ball was not ducking your head at the ball. It was putting your shoulders, protecting yourself. And I think for all that's made about duty of care to other players, you owe yourself a duty of care more than anything. And going in like that is not providing yourself the best element of duty of care. Whereas Wilmot is protecting himself. He's not going to get hit in the head because he's tucked. And also he's like got his hand on the ball. The other guy comes in late. So it's crazy. And I think like Cornsey was saying, is definitely an element of like, that should just be play on.
Yep.
It should be play on. They need to be like, they can't be so focused on certain actions which need to leave the game and other ones which are like potentially more problematic. You know, they were saying that it doesn't happen very often that people will get hurt doing that. I disagree. I think it's more likely to cause issue with bumping, because you can bump someone in the shoulder, but if their head's there and it's not supposed to be, and if if he'd gone in normally, you get your classic like Voss and Byron Pickett worlds colliding moments and things like that, where both guys run into each other like crazy. They're both fine. So it cannot be, and something needs to happen with that, but will it? Probably not.
No, I'm just, I guess I'm just waiting to see if that gets looked at all, and whether, you know, they do a little bit of a report at the end of, I know the home and away, you know, the MRO findings, the home and away rounds. I don't know if they're going to do that for the pre-season match, but it'd be interesting to see if anything comes of that whatsoever, or if it just gets, because there's been no chat about it, and obviously there's been bigger incidents to talk about in the remainder of the weekend. But that, I mean, apart from Kane and Kingy, haven't heard, you know, boo from it. So, Danaher quiet again, better output than the previous week, but still a quiet game. But interesting that they played Henry Smith as well for a good portion of the game. So you've got, you know, two recognised ruckman and Danaher. Now, I don't know if that's a case of, you know, we played Henry Smith, therefore Danaher didn't get as much time in the ruck. He didn't get involved in the game more. Do you reckon that's going to come to his detriment?
Danaher's?
Yeah.
Not really. I don't think that we're probably not looking at a two ruck system. I just probably with Danaher and O's importance, I think Smith having a bit of a chop out was probably just a bit of a contingency, possibly in red time, or whether they'd whether they were like, okay, so given the heat, we'll just have you play the last few minutes of quarters, or just like chop in when they get tired or need a break or whatever. So I'm not reading much into that at all.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Charlie, huge game last week. Very frustrating game, and you could see how frustrated he was this week. And Harry Cunningham, again, has managed to keep him very, very quiet. So he's got Charlie's number at the moment. But as we sort of touched on last week, he didn't, you know, in years gone by, if Charlie doesn't get involved in the game, you can see his body language shift dramatically, and he becomes... you know, his team play really drops off as well. But that hasn't been the case, and it wasn't the case on Thursday. He obviously didn't hit the scoreboard, but, you know, the whole game, he just kept presenting, kept trying to lay tackles. The defensive pressure was still there, but to no avail.
He was frustrated. Frustrated boy.
Yes.
Also, worth noting, did you notice his mouth guard?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it?
Kind of funny, given that he was pretty coy about that last year. You know, the idea. So if you didn't notice, his mouth guard is like black with like the two teeth.
Yep.
You know, obviously like a photo of of his actual mush without the two teeth. And yeah, given he was so kind of coy about that and embarrassed, it's kind of funny to see him repping it. I wonder if it was a gift.
Hey, very possibly,
he went to do that. Like, was Eddie Betts sending him through a game day special? Who knows? But I thought it was funny. Yeah, he was frustrated, and he was probably about 2 inches away from about 3 spectacular things at various different times. He had a pretty heavy fall on that like left kind of hip flexor glute area, which he didn't seem too happy about. And it's just kind of like, dude, chill out, man. Like, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So good to see him not drop off. Link McCarthy was good again.
Yeah, that was
like
going to be
him.
my next little point of chat here. He's had 2 very good preseason games. Link McCarthy. He looks like he's attacked the off season. Very disappointed with the way things ended last year, and he's ready to really go, because it took him a while last year to get going as well. He was one of a few players we had our eye on at the first sort of 10 rounds last year, but if the preseason is anything to go by, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, that's not going to be the case this year for Link.
Nah, he should really hit the ground running, and I think he's a severely underrated player within the AFL and really undervalued.
100%, and I wonder if
he'd be one of the first names on the team.
Yeah. And now that Kai Lohmann is really starting to come along, there's that extra pressure for him to perform as well, and it's going to take a bit for Link to get dropped. But Kai Loman's obviously an AFL standard player. He played a very decent game on Thursday night, so he's nipping at the heels, waiting for his chance to get involved in the team. So there's that little bit of extra incentive for Link to stay in at that standard.
So, a question about a couple things. So Kai Lohmann, it didn't necessarily look like he was playing strictly as a forward. It looked like he was almost playing on the wing, or even like in the midfield.
Yeah,
he was cropping up almost everywhere. What are your thoughts on that? Did you have any insider goss?
No insider goss, but I think it is like, we know Kai Loman's a good footy player. We want him in the team. How do we get him in the team? So let's experiment with different roles and see how and where he can perform at a good level, because we know his natural game is that high half forward that is crafty around goals. Let's see what other skill sets he's got. See if we can weasel him into the team. Is there a spot on the wing for him? Because that's one of those spots that is not necessarily open, but it's one of those roles.
There's room for difference.
Yeah,
there's potential for improvement. Speaking of the wings, did you notice, like, I felt Jared Berry was almost playing more of a midfieldy, almost behind the ball, Nigel Lapany style game. He obviously is spending a bit of time on the wing, and I really hope people don't focus on that one and then other holding the ball-y situation, because there was plenty of good stuff he did. Could there also be a situation with Dev Rob and Ashcroft out of him coming and spending more time in the midfield?
Yeah.
With others playing the wing role?
Yeah, very possibly. He's a big body. He's played it before. And obviously, there was just, I guess those few moments you're referring to, there was just a few moments where he looked to take the first handball and then sort of balked at it and then got caught. And, if he can just get sort of like, take the first option if it's there, if he can sort of get his mind into that mode a little bit more, and he'll become, a bit more efficient. He might turn the ball over more, but you're definitely going to turn it over if you get pinged holding the ball. So there's a little bit of tidying up in that respect, but yeah, his body took a few hits and his shoulder held up well. He did some good things. He obviously can cover the ground really well as well.
Yeah, I feel like if I had like the ability to see the full field on those moments, because there had been times, particularly in the Gold Coast game, where our forward structure seemed to be broken down, whether it was changes or interchanges or whatever, and I'll wager that was probably another situation of looking up and going, well, there's no tall leading down the line and something's broken down in communication, and you sort of just stuck at the exit of your defensive 50 going, okay, there's nothing on here, and probably him lacking the confidence to like bite off a kick like as Zorko or Coleman would. Harris as well. Harris's disposal is so good.
Yeah.
For a giant. Like, people talk about Stephen May's disposal, but man, Harris Andrews is every bit as good and also can do it on both feet. His handballing's better than May.
He rarely takes he does often take a safe kick. He often takes a 20-meter pass to someone that's open, but he rarely misses a target.
But when he doesn't, they're as penetrating as a lot of the other guys. Like, I know May's kind of like their quarterback for Melbourne, but yeah, keep an eye on it, because I think you'll notice Harris does bite off some difficult kicks more than you think.
Yeah, okay. Tunstall showed good signs. I think there's every chance that Fags squeezes him into the round one team. He may start on the bench, he may start as sub, but he's had 2 fairly decent hit-outs. He looks clean. Probably just needs to put on a little bit more size, but covers the ground well, gets the contests. His disposal's okay. There's a few little hairy moments with him, but he's showed some really good signs.
There was some funny moments where just a lot of the fringe players, so I think all of Madden, Lohman, Tunstall, and Sharpie all got caught holding the ball, like within a very small period of time between each other. And it's like, these guys are trying hard.
Yeah.
They're trying and they just want to impress. But
it reminds me of Lohman.
Zach Bailey.
Yeah. No, Lohman, especially reminds me of Zach Bailey in his first couple of years where he's obviously been able to get away with things and try a fend off or try and break the first tackle in his underage years. And then he steps up to the AFL, finds out it's not that easy, but you've just got to keep going for it. And Lohman's had a few of those moments that really reminds me of Zach Bailey early years. And I think if he can keep doing that, he'll be able to string it all together. Obviously, Bailey missing on Thursday night, so he's one to come back in.
Yeah, flu as to whether it's the actual flu or a cold.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Or something else.
Stupid vernacular on these people telling us weird stuff. So he was missing. Midfield group looked good. Dunkley was pretty good, pretty clean. Given the conditions.
Yeah, there was some, for as good as the hit out was, there was some poor football from both sides, skill-wise, and that comes down to it being 30-plus degrees and 65+% humidity, and there is going to be skill errors when that happens. So, but you'd think out of the 2 teams that we would adjust to it quicker, doing a whole pre-season in Brisbane.
We didn't go down to Tassie this pre-season, did we?
Nah, I think that's been done.
Done.
Yeah, I don't know that they sort of do that anymore. Maybe in the early years where we have a longer off-season pre-season, then there's time to go down to Tassie for a camp. But now we've got a shorter pre-season because we've made it deep into finals.
Because we're playing finals, baby.
Yeah, so it's done its job. So, I think that's been put on ice for now, which is
not
fine.
The ice of Tasmania, I assume.
No, and it's probably more beneficial training up here in Queensland in the heat, in the humidity, in sticky conditions where skills are going to become a huge priority because you need to be able to execute with a greasy ball.
Yeah, true. But I suppose it's not every last day on September was like the one we just had.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know whether it was like a post-COVID soft cap thing. Where
it could be that too.
Didn't happen anymore. But it's just, to put it, I would love to go to Tasmania in the Brisbane summer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I was there. I think I remember Jack Rewalt saying something along those lines of, him talking about the Tassie team, saying like, I'm spending my time in Melbourne, then I go to Tassie in the off season. It's like, of course you would. You probably have like a distillery down there or some garbage. So, on that for him. So, talk about the 22 or 23 that you would have going into.
Yeah, there's one.
Open.
We will get into it. One question I want to ask you. Obviously, Gardner played up forward again. Do you think those 2 headouts, has he shown enough for whatever Fagan's looking for that he lines up there round 1?
Well, what I can say is I would be willing to... I know this is not correct, but the amount of pressure... So the ball hits the deck after a contest. He's another defender, essentially. The amount of pressure that he puts in and the perceived pressure and the positional awareness that he has is far better than Gunston ever had in that role, I would say. Maybe not ever in his whole career, but ever for us. So I think there's definitely value in it. And he's not like... Yeah, he's the 3rd tall, but he's not that tall. And it's not like he's poor below his knees. He's probably only about 2 or 3 centimeters taller than Cam Rayner. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. But
but Rayner makes up for that in hops.
Why?
Yeah.
But Rayner was a raging bull through the midfield. The amount of times he broke through the lines, and if you're gonna, hello Pooch,
Yep, dog in the background.
dog in the background. I had the cat on the scratching post, and then it fucked off after it woke me up 3 hours ago. So, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, like, do you want to see Cam Rayner in the midfield? If the answer is yes, then Gardner plays, because it kind of facilitates that. I'm strong on that.
Yep.
But if they want Cam Rayner to play as a forward, then he won't play. That's my take on it.
I mean, you would imagine maybe Dev comes into that team. Maybe he doesn't. Dev played very well in the VFL. So there is room for him to come back in as that midfielder. I don't know. It really depends if Fagan wants to experiment with this in the first little bit of the season, or if he wants to go with what he knows is a winning formula with Rayner up forward, especially with Wiedering out. That really makes a difference to Carlton's backline, and Marchbank out as well. So they're relying on sort of Camp and Lewis Young as their sort of key defenders, who you would have to imagine Hipwood and Danaher can break even, if not get on top of those two. Just Wiedering out is such a huge thing for them. Whether Walsh plays, I don't know either. So I don't know if Fagan goes, all right, we've seen it in the pre-season, now let's keep working on it in the twos, Gardner, and then, once you get your forward craft up a little bit more, then we'll introduce you against a North, a West Coast, someone where we don't know we're going to beat, but, we can afford to, or someone with a depleted backline. I'm not sure. So I'm glad I saw it again, but I don't know that I want to see it in round one or opening round.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just something that if it happens, it happens. It's not the sort of thing, though. Like, if it was to happen, would you be like overtly aggressive?
No. If he,
because I don't understand the relative hostility around the idea, because it's I was pretty soft on Gunston last year throughout and about the kind of structure and things like that. But, I think this is ultimately an upgrade on it.
Yeah.
But, you're saying, Dev can come in and play in the midfield, but it's a different sort of midfielder. Like, there's no one like Cam Rayner in our team. So it's, if you want that type of thing, and, it's been talked about forever of him being like a Petrarca, dusty, explosive midfielder through the pack. But it leaves a hole. So, and also, it's the sort of thing we were talking as well in the first couple of weeks. If Hipwood or Danaher goes down, you don't want someone coming in completely off the rack, So I don't mind it either way. I can see it happening both ways. So did Devrob play in the VFL, did he?
He did, yeah. Played a decent game too. And the other thing that may be on Fags' mind is, Geordie DeGoey, through that final series and the grand final, match breaker, match winner, and obviously that goal from 60 out will live in the heads of both Brisbane and Collingwood fans for a long time for different reasons. But maybe Fags is looking at that going, we're 4 points away from a premiership, we need that player, and that player is Cam Rayner, so we need to make that happen. So maybe he's going to persist with Gardner in that forward position to facilitate that. We'll see on Thursday night.
Cam Rayner, I think he was at more centre bounce entries in the preseason than at any point last year. So that's great for him. I think the more that he can do and the more that he can show is great. But yeah, as far as like the 23 coming in, what are your thoughts? We were going to talk about it, and then we both woke up and AFL.com, Michael Whitting's done that. Yeah. And he's done a pretty good job, in fairness.
I mean, Bailey comes in, obviously. Yeah. What's he got? Lester, Harris, Stars. I mean, that back six is more or less solid. I think while McKenna is out, that Jimmy Madden holds his position. Jimmy Madden did good things. He's just not Connor McKenna. Like, his ball use and his creativity is just not at the level that McKenna's is, and his line breaking and things like that. So he's got Berry.
He's too. Are you saying he's too nice Irish, not Irish bastard yet?
Yeah.
He doesn't have that kind of like. It's not that like arrogant.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor style. Like, I can do everything. It's like, yeah, I'm friendly.
Yeah.
Got a pint of Guinness?
I would largely agree with what Michael Whiting's put on the AFL.com.au website.
Oh, is it Whiting or Whiting? Because you said Whiting before, and now you're saying Whiting. You make me look like a dickhead.
No, it's Whiting. Big Fish Whiting.
Yeah, I know. I went to okay.
Anyway.
I went to school with a Whiting. So stitch me up here.
Yeah, he's got Owie, Neil Dunkley in the middle, the interchange Madden, Archie, Zorko, Darcy Gunn, Nakai Loman. Sure. Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that. I think the only thing that may change is Tunstall in for maybe Jasper Fletcher, who's had a quiet couple of pre-season games, but I think Jasper will get first crack at it.
Yeah, I mean, Sharpie's obviously not there. He played in both pre-seasons. I could easily see him and Tunstall in there. I could see any one of Loam and Archie not in there. So it's kind of more just like there's a Dev Rob as well.
Yeah.
So you're looking at trying to cram in various levels of Madden, Archie, Loman, Tunstall, Dev Rob, just five into about 3 spots. So any which way,
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately from the beginning, we've got quite a healthy list, and I think full credit to the high performance team, because looking at some of the other injury lists makes for salivating viewing for us. But
don't worry, we have been lucky over the last sort of 5 years, and that is obviously credit to the high performance strength conditioning medical teams. We've been able to Lincoln McCarthy couldn't get a game at Geelong, and now he's missed 4 games or something since he's moved up north. So, yeah, that can't stay forever. I mean, obviously.
Well, the thing is, it hasn't as well. We've had some big injuries. We've had elements of Zorko being in and out, but on the whole, it's sort of I think whether they're treating the overall red zone, you've done too much, so taper off this or whatever. They're just doing it right.
Yep.
So there's something in that, surely. Whatever the hell West Coast are doing, are they making them literally run to and from training and then do training and then
honestly,
cutting them with machetes on their legs? Probably.
Who knows? Hey, that is that's a constant battle over there, and you'd have to think at some point they look at their strength and conditioning program and go, what the hell's going on here? A lot of people blame the Optus surface as well. I don't know how much training they do on Optus, but that's been a point of contention as well over the last couple of years. But yeah, West Coast have just copped it again.
Well, yeah, I was going to try and make a joke about something, but I couldn't remember or think of anything interesting about who their high performance coach is. So, pick any kind of dumb Perth gym junkie and throw him in there, and that's him.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Maybe it's Ben Cousins.
All right. Hey, we got a question again from our mate Capish, who sent through his question.
So is it Capish or Capiche?
No, it's Capish because he says it in this one, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it this time. Turn that up. Here we go.
Hello there, Brisbane Lions Fancast. I love your work. It's me again, Capish. I just want to have one question in regards to the Brisbane Lions and, kind of relating to my mental health. Will we choke any games this year? If so, please tell me which ones so, I can be mentally prepared, because I don't want to go through the hell that I experienced in round 20, 2022 and the round 18, 2023. Thank you.
There you go. There's Capish with the question there. And the games he's referring to are obviously that game against Melbourne at the MCG and that game against Richmond. Yeah, when we were up by 40-odd points at halftime and then just bottled it from then. So are we going to bottle any games this year? And if so, which ones? And I wish I had the foresight to tell you, Capish.
Shit. So we've become a celestial entity, seemingly, where we're having to far out. Yes, we will, and we are trying to reduce it from more than 1 to 1.
Yep.
As we previously previously theorized.
Well, I mean, the performances I wanted to try and limit were the ones against your Port Adelaide.
Yeah, true. Whatever.
The ones where we absolutely we get out to a 5, 6, 7 goal lead and then have it dwindled. Is that going to happen again? I don't think so, because
What's more frustrating though? Like, is it the ones that Capish is talking about, or are they the ones where we literally don't show up?
No, the ones where we don't show up is the worst thing for any sport fan to have to endure.
I think those ones make me angry.
Oh yeah,
and the mental health ones are obviously super depressing because it's like an inability to close out games.
Yeah,
I'm going to say we will not have any of those.
Yeah, I'm going to say that too, and I think after that Melbourne game, there was a series of games where we could have done that as well. Like Geelong, we blitzed them in the first 3 quarters and they started to peg it back and got within 11 points or something. You're like, uh-oh. The Adelaide game, the Freo game.
Freo, St Kilda.
Yeah, they all had similar feels to it, but we managed to hold them off. So I think that was a catalyst for a bit of match scenario practice for the Lions, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't see it again, but you never know.
If it is a case of that happening, talk to someone, talk to your friends, talk to your family members.
Yeah, of course.
Talk to us.
Yeah, send us a speak pipe. The other thing worth noting is that both of those games he's referring to were on the MCG. So look at the fixture for the MCG games. Maybe it's going to be one of those.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Brilliant.
Yeah, well, as far as the Swans game goes, there's not a whole lot more to talk about. Like I said, good hit out against good opposition. A lot of people think the Swans will be up there, sort of maybe even a top 4 team, but definitely sort of playing finals with the way they finished off last year. So good to get a decent hit out against decent opposition as well. So I think that's put us in good stead to play on Friday night against the Blues. Yeah, looking ahead to the Blues, one thing we're going to introduce this year, rather than the nostalgic player of the week, is we're going to look at the team we're coming up against and look back on some either classic games between the two teams, or if there's none to be remembered there, then maybe we'll look at it like a dual citizen, sort of a favourite player that comes to mind that played for both of those clubs. So think your Mitch Robbos, your Sam Dohertys, your Fevs when it comes to Brisbane and Carlton. But let's have a look at some of them.
Just to be known, I rolled my eyes at Sam Doherty because it's like, I think I said before we started, I have no recollection of him actually playing for the Lions. So
yeah, he didn't play many games, to be fair. But let's...
Neither did Fev, but that legacy lives on forever.
Well, yeah, because for not the right reasons. All right, let's have a look at some of the memorable games between the two, Lions and Carlton, and one that sticks out, obviously, probably the more memorable in recent history is the 2009 elimination final, the Daniel Rich clinic, where he was playing exclusively midfield in his first season, just picking off goals from 60. The Daniel Bradshaw, curl around goal to seal it. One of the great games.
It's a fun re-watch on the old highlights because you've got like small Bryce Gibbs and small Eddie Betts and a bunch of weird people running around. You're like, oh, look at you. You're retired now. Cool.
And then you look at our team and you've got some players running around in that Guernsey hair.
Yeah, I mean, evergreen Simon Black, Brownie's there. Fev's last game for Carlton.
Yeah.
Worth noting. His first game for the Lions was against Carlton, I think?
Yeah, I think they would.
No, that might have been round 2 or...
Yeah. They would have put it early on.
I don't know. But a great game.
Stephen Quartermain commentating, one of the greats.
I was thinking about Quarters, actually last night when I was just sort of generally, sometimes you just sit and think because watching TV can be poisonous.
Yeah. Time to think about Quarters.
What happened to him?
Well, he was with Channel 10, and then when the footy went back to Channel 7 and Fox, he just, I don't know if they didn't offer him a contract, or he said, you know what, that's it for me. He got a contract from, maybe ABC Radio or something like that. I don't know is the short answer, but, as good as anyone in the comm box.
Well, he was doing grand finals. He was doing...
Leo Barry, you star.
02 and 03.
Yep.
Leah Barry's star, obviously.
Swooping his hooper.
Yeah, true. That one's not as good, but that was also in that game, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
That was in the 09 limb.
Yeah.
The one that I'd picked, rather than classic, was more significant because I think we've taken two different meanings. I'd written down in my notes significant games.
Yeah.
So I've gone 2001 against Princess Park where we got towed by about 80 points to provide the catalyst. It's funny, ring theory and all that. I know that I get very theological on this podcast. We've had the ship of Theseus last week.
Yeah, what have you got for us this week?
We've had our astrological intervention with capiche, not capiche, capish. But the idea of listening to things that are like, are the role players the ones that elevate good teams to great? It's sort of like, bro, is this 2001 and you're Lee Matthews in the rooms at Princess Park?
Yeah.
Like, identifying the role players of Carlton going, these are the guys that are the difference. Pull your socks up and Asada can get out too. We've all heard that anecdote from one Jay Ackermanis. So from then, it's interesting because there's a little bit of misinformation about that. We didn't actually go undefeated after that. I think we won one, then we lost to Adelaide at home, and then we won 16 in a row on the way to the first flag. So that was a massive turning point for that team.
Yeah.
Carlton, what a bunch of bastards.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with that story, it is one that's often told from players from that era. And Lee Matthews, he put the two lists up side by side and said, you guys, list-wise on paper, you've got, X games more experience. You're better here, you're better here, you're better here. But the difference was these guys are playing their role. Like, what is this guy doing? We need someone to do that sort of thing. And that's what led us on that charge to get that first flag. So it's a really great story and a really great catalyst. And who knows, if we didn't get towed up by Carlton, do we win that flag? Do we win the next two? Who knows? But
particularly when you're seeing guys like Tim Notting and Copeland and Sean Hart just turn into like the ultimate role players, and the idea that you can even say Sean Hart was a role player in that team and he won the Norm Smith is pretty unbelievable. Because maybe Embley. Who are some other Norm Smith medalists that were like, bona fide role players?
Probably Isaac Smith, 2022 for the wingman. Just fantastic. Like one of the great games who, from the stories, he almost didn't make it to the ground. So that's probably the most recent that I can think of.
We had to go one from literally 2 years ago. But the only reason he didn't make it to the ground was because such a turncloak, he got confused. Imagine going from Hawthorn to Geelong. God.
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? And obviously, last year's prelim, that's going to go down in Brisbane Lions sort of folklore for a little bit as well. 5-goal head start to the Blues before pegging it back, and lucky to be in front at halftime, thanks to a Hipwood goal sort of just before the siren at halftime last year. And then, we just ran away with it after there. But that was a classic game in its own right that had us all on the edge of our seat from go to woe.
So do you think opening round that they have, 15,000 Carlton fans, given the AFL probably aren't in charge of the ticketing here?
No, I'd like to think Greg Swan has rectified that and is more home-friendly crowd this time round. But I do know of a few Carlton fans that are coming up for it, so there's definitely going to be enough there. Big Victorian clubs always get a decent support wherever they play.
Yeah, I don't like it, I didn't like that.
Well,
what can you do?
I mean, it's all sold out now, so hopefully there will be a healthy showing of Brisbane Lions fans on Friday night. That's for sure.
Well, 50,000 members, they bloody better be. I tell you what. So,
yeah.
So aside from that, we had pre-season.
Yep.
For everyone else. I'll level with you. I didn't watch a kick of any other teams. But I did see 2 bumps.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Now, if Sam Powell-Peppers was stupid...
Yep.
Old mates from yesterday, who looked like he'd literally just come off of like a Greyhound bus to play, was possibly the dumbest thing I've seen in possibly 10 years of football.
That is pants on head level stupidity from Jimmy Webster. That's probably the worst bump I've seen since Stephen May on Steph Martin. And Cozzy Pickett last year on Smith, similar. You know, both leaving the ground, both turning themselves into a projectile. But like everything that Jimmy Webster could have done wrong, he did wrong in that bump on Simpkin yesterday. And watching Jai Simpkin's neck just snap back, I honestly, what was going through his head when he decided to do that?
Well, obviously nothing tactically, because going for a simple smother would have been the actual percentage play there. But maybe he was didn't want to break his fingers or something like that. But yeah, I don't think anyone can really.
I mean, even the commentators afterwards, they try their best to be pragmatic about it and not. But even they were just like, that's just dumb. Like, that's the exact thing that we don't want to see in the game. We've just seen Angus Brayshaw retire. You know, Powell Pepper's getting 4 weeks, and there was, you know, he obviously got the 4 weeks, but there was enough there to mount a case. Like, the guy got swung around, he went for a tackle, turned into a bump. There's things you can sort of do to try and defend yourself in that, you know, tribunal hearing. Jimmy Webster hasn't got a leg to stand on with this because both his feet are off the ground.
What? Like, I have no words. Like, because, like, if you jump, what are you going to do? Like, you're jumping, so you're going to be higher, and then the thing you want to avoid is a high bump. Like, wouldn't you want to be going down, like anti-jumping? Collapse your legs.
And I don't know which part of it is him that collects Simpkin. It could be his shoulder. It even sort of looked like even maybe the point of his elbow, you know, from some angles as well. But it's just, I cannot believe you go through a whole pre-season, you go through all this talk about, you know, concussion and bumping and collecting people high and duty of care and all that sort of stuff we've been banging on about for years, and it's just going to get amped up. And if Powell Pepper is getting 4, then this is 6 minimum.
Yeah, well, there's a case to be made with Powell Pepper that, because people have sort of said, oh, you know, you get these old dragons that are like, oh, back in the old day. It's like, no, back in the old day with Webster, them's fighting words in any era. Oh, yeah. Any era. Like, you know, watch the Matthew Lloyd one or Brodie Holland or whatever. Like, they're all funny when you look at it now. But they started, like, all-in brawls. Well, not all-in brawls, but, like, shit went on after those things. Yeah. Like, in any era, like, why do you think guys were doing that in the 80s and then they were doing it to other people because they did it to them and all of that sort of thing? Like, it's all elements of, like, at any era, these things were, like, deemed dog acts. Powell Pepper less so, I'd say. I'd say that's the sort of thing that was probably more accepted back in the 80s and 90s that phased out and should no longer be in the sport. But there's it wouldn't have started a crazy riot back in the day, whereas the Webster one absolutely would have.
It's just, it absolutely boggles my mind. And as we're recording this a little bit before 10 a.m. on a Monday morning, I'm sure there's all sorts of chats going on in media at the moment. And, you know, it's going straight to the tribunal. I don't know if that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday morning, whatever. But as I said, 6 minimum. 6 minimum has to be.
They need to throw the book at him, but as long as the book is made of concrete. Like,
and then there's been all this, you know, ancillary stuff with his family members. Yeah, I don't know.
What go on with that?
So his family members, I think a couple of his sisters and his brother were sort of making light of this situation on Facebook, and encouraging and cheering the bump on and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, what are you doing? You're making this, like, you can only imagine Jimmy Webster's social medias are getting absolutely slammed, and he's getting all sorts of vile things said to him at the moment. And I'm not going to say he deserves it, but he has, you know, actions have consequences.
There's the lack of sympathy for it, surely, because it's sort of like, yeah, firstly, I would argue the question, if you're a professional sport, why would you want to have social media anyway? But, like, you know, when you have, like, the Saints coaches, I can't remember off the top of my head who was like, yeah, he's not that sort of player. It's like, what?
Or
he is.
the fella Corey Enright, yeah.
Enright. Yeah, it's like, okay, so he's not that sort of player. It's like...
Well, to be fair,
Well-
like Jimmy Webster's been in the AFL system for a long time, and this is the first time he's done anything notable.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's the only thing he's ever done that's notable because I've never heard of him except for this one thing.
Yeah.
So, which is
So he's got his name on the map. Maybe that's what he wanted.
It's what go out with a bang. Like, yeah, possibly the dumbest thing I've seen in football
Yeah.
since I've paid attention.
I'll be very interested to see how that lands in the tribunal. What sort of... Because like they tried to set a precedent. They tried to come out hard on Pal Pepper. I thought 4 weeks for Pal Pepper was a little bit on the harsh side, but they're trying to get rid of this stuff from the game. So this has to be a lengthy ban. And, maybe it's time... Incidents like that, you sort of look at a red card system like they do in soccer.
Yeah, I mean, as a big watcher of soccer, I think that would cause issues because there are still also issues with that in soccer.
Yeah.
Like in theory it works, but if you've ever been on the receiving end of a red card that shouldn't have happened and you're left to play with 10 men for fucking 80 minutes, it's never a good time, is it? And there's nothing you can do to change that.
Yeah.
So that's actually one thing that I'll say. Now, this is going to be not a rant, but it is an indictment on the positive indictment on the arc that we've got in the AFL. And I think the distinguishing factor between the arc and other things, whether it's VAR in the Premier League or whatever the one in the Rugby World Cup was, because that was a car crash, the arc doesn't deal with decision making. And that's what makes it so much better than all of the other ones put together. Because you've allowed the umpires to make their decision. That's done. And albeit the arc screwed up pretty badly with the Adelaide thing. But that was more a process thing. And the speed at which it happens, and I think there's a lot of people that watch the AFL from abroad and they hear the arc and the communication between the umpire and them. And they're like, wow, they tell you what's going on. They need to bring that into the ground if they haven't already. I can't remember. But yes, the arc gets 2 thumbs up from me.
There you go.
I thought having watched the Rugby Union World Cup final, that was one of the most disjointed and borderline, let's say, strange games to watch in terms of the amount of interference from a video referee. I don't know if you watched
I did not.
The final.
No, I did
not.
not.
So it was New Zealand and the Springboks.
Yep.
And to literally have the Springboks kick the winning points with the umpire or the referee saying, he gave a penalty. And and the guy's like, bro, I didn't do that. And he's like, oh, I thought you did. And then he looked at the screen. He's like, oh, you were right. Whoops. Can't do anything about it. As, the Springboks kick the winning points. But then to have, the All Blacks score a try and have that be taken back from, 5 phases of play earlier because someone, knocked the ball on and it wasn't... Even though, I was on tilt with that. And, I'm not a big rugby union watcher.
Who is?
I do... Yeah, well, I think it's better than league, unpopular opinion. But, I was like, man, this is horrible. And the amount of, VAR mishaps. There was even one yesterday with, technically it wasn't a VAR mishap, but the amount of times that the Referees Association in the Premier League has to apologise to clubs for making errors when you've literally got a video referee looking at it in slow motion and they forget to draw offside lines or they don't look at the right thing. And it's just man, the less video referee, the better. By all means, if that ball's out, if that ball's in, if it crosses the line, is it a goal? Did it hit the post? Keep that. I don't know how I got onto this from red cards, but I think it's just red cards can be... Sometimes they're cut and dry, as we were talking about with Zinedine Zidane headbutting that guy in the World Cup final in 2006. Yes, that's a red card. But for every one of those, there's a dude that slightly hit taps another dude and he goes down clutching his face, and then you're like, oh, here we go. As soon as you start toying with the idea of a man advantage, there can be problems.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and
if we're talking about guys going in with their head first to win a free kick to potentially get a goal, imagine the kind of shit people are going to do if they can get an extra player advantage, given the coaches crap on about extra bench spots every off-season. Like, anyway, that's my rant over on that.
No, you made great points compared to my Jimmy Webster bump bad get off.
Well, I was going to say, in conclusion, Jimmy Webster, what a grub. And if he doesn't play AFL footy again, I won't care because I didn't know who he was before this happened. So,
yeah, well, we wait.
And all I got to say is he looks like the type.
I mean, I don't know Jimmy Webster from a bar or so, but that was a textbook dog act. Textbook dog act that he's pulled off on Jai Simpkin there as well, who is one of the game's greats. He's North's captain, and now I don't know if the 12 days, if it's falling into their opening game, probably not. So, it's in a pre-season game too. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, I think it's Jai Simpkin's second concussion in 12 months, so there's a bit of hesitation on that as well. And if Angus Brayshaw's anything to go by, I mean, that guy was running around like 2 days after his.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show I didn't think that was a good look for him at the time. And
here's one for you, just as I've read this right now in real time. Here's the headline for you. AFL to announce tightened concussion protocols prior to opening round.
Are they going to do a 30-dayer?
The AFL with a more stringent set of concussion protocols as Jimmy Webster becomes the latest player, blah, blah, blah. Clubs have been told that the minimum 12-day rest period after conclusion will remain. But the AFL Chief Medical Officer, Michael Makdisi, has also written to inform that there will be a further tightening of the return-to-play protocols. So it looks like the 21 days will stay there, but you're going to have to tick a few more boxes if you want to get back on the field, it looks like.
12 or 21?
12, sorry. 12-day.
Yeah.
And then a few more boxes after that.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think of other sports, and I think, wrestling's not technically a sport, but I think they have a 30-day concussion thing. I mean, particularly after that guy went nuts and killed his family, but not having any of that, hopefully. Keep an eye on Jai Simpkins. Make sure he doesn't disappear off the face of the earth.
Well, I mean, Shane Tuck is probably the more recent one who, posthumously diagnosed with CTE, and, his life obviously spiraled towards the end there, and due to concussions, all that sort of stuff, and who knows how many more AFL, Danny Frawley.
That's good points.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. There's not much more we can say about the Jimmy Webster situation other than there's just grade A level stupidity from him, and 6 weeks minimum. We'll wait and see what happens there. And thankfully we haven't seen any of our players do anything like that. But if we do, I'd like to think we're not sitting here defending that. No,
and I think it's probably a positive on our club culture as well that even in the last 4 seasons, 3, let's go 3 just to be safe.
Yeah.
Very few suspensions. We had Zorko with the eye thing.
Yeah.
Link McCarthy, Zorko just having his one a year. Lincoln McCarthy giving a jumper punch to Camden McIntosh, which I was all for. Because, if anyone needs to be on, what's that thing?
Mosh or whatever.
Yeah, that one, or the one with those ridiculous commercials that have been around for since the late 2000s.
Well, it's just
Ashley Martin.
Yeah. There was a random season where Camden McIntosh did have hair, and that was very odd.
Yeah, well,
but then it disappeared.
Does he
again.
have hair now?
No.
Is he wearing a wig? Who knows? But yeah, aside from that, what have we had? We had Cam Rayner dumping Ben Brown one time, which probably shouldn't have been at the time, but whatever. We've been largely pretty good. We've had no slings, no.
I think Berry got cited but overturned.
That was for the eye gouge.
Yeah, there was another one last year, I think. Can't remember who it was against. Maybe it was against Sydney, actually. It might have been against Hayward, in fact, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
but largely unscathed compared. And like, I just don't think that like, I think like, if your club hasn't had anything remotely like that, you're in pretty good stead, because most clubs would have had at least one bad one. You know, for all of everyone thinking that Jeremy Cameron's like, you know, a great dude and an awesome football player and like, you know, cool culture and whatever. It's like, yeah, the dude also did elbow Harris Andrews in the head.
Yeah. And
he also did break Reece Matheson's jaw in a preseason game as well. It's like, you know, like not everyone is, you know, goes through unbesmirched, but we're doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, we've just got Zorko. It's general shithousery throughout the year.
Yeah, but as I said, I think a lot of players probably just ignore him, to be honest.
Fair enough. All right, anything else to touch on before we head to opening round on Friday night? We'll be back next week with a deep dive on that game. We'll look at what went right, what went wrong, and see how we go. But yeah, anything else you want to touch on before we head there?
Not so much, other than just general Vic bias, them having extra days rest, both of them, Melbourne and Carlton, and also Victorian teams not travelling in the pre-season, and all the interstate clubs did, but let's not worry about that. Let's just go and smack Carlton.
Yeah, try and reverse some of our round one favours and try and get a big win on the board. So yeah, looking forward to it. As I said a couple of weeks ago, you know, Carlton's last game was us at the Gabba in that prelim final, so they've had a long time to stew on that and what they can do differently and what they can do better. Obviously, we've had a different game to reflect on, but I don't think it's going to mean we're going to take Carlton any less lightly. So, should be a good one. Should be a spicy game. Should be lots of fireworks.
All I can say is that they can't possibly get a better start.
No. God.
And if they do, I will need to give Capish a call.
Fair enough. Well, don't forget to check us out online at brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. We're still raffling off those double premium passes to the Round 8 Q Clash. You can get your tickets there. Follow us on all social medias and join the Patreon, because this video will be going up on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Brisbane Lions Fancast. And, Patrick's doing something that you can only see on video right now. Sounds a lot more suggestive than it actually is. But we will see you this time next week after what will hopefully be a resounding win against the Blues.